At this point, I'm going to hand things over to Mike and his session today, which is Azure SQL Database is a guided tour.
Hey, Jason, thank you. Yeah, Azure's hard to say sometimes. Can you hear me okay still right now?
Yeah, sounds great. And you
Wonderful.
are now the presenter.
Okay, I'm going to share my monitor. This is always the first fun part, is making sure I'm sharing the right monitor. And if I am, you should see a big white screen that says Azure SQL Database on it.
Yes, it does.
Oh, look at that. Hey, success. So welcome. Thank you for coming. We're going to talk about what's on the screen. We're going to talk about Azure SQL Databases. And this is really, it's a guided tour. So if you showed up here and you're an expert in Azure SQL, you have a lot of clients deployed, you have elastic pools built, and you know you're rocking and rolling in Azure, this may be a bit remedial for you. This is really kind of geared towards the people who maybe you've heard of this Azure thing, you've heard of platform as a service, and you've heard of the cloud, but you're just not really sure what does it mean to me. Or maybe you're like I was 5 years ago, and maybe Jason was like this 5 years ago too, a little afraid, like, not afraid, but maybe scoffing, a mixture of scoffing at the cloud and maybe slightly worried about the cloud. And you just want to see what it's all about. And that's why I'm doing this. So it's really a guided tour. We're going to give some slides, and then we're going to go into the portal and really just going to watch me play in the Azure portal. And normally when I give this session, I give it in person, and it's pretty interactive. So I'm assuming that, Jason, you'll have a chance to see questions that pop up?
Yes, I will.
Okay, perfect. So just feel free to interrupt me with questions anytime you want. Either you can chat them to me, Jason, in the window, or you can even just turn your mic on and interrupt. That's perfect. I want it to be interactive because I want to be able to answer questions. And we're going to try and at least cover the why, the how, and the what in the first 15, 20 minutes, and then we'll go into the portal and actually play, and we'll jump into Management Studio and show you that, hey, it's a real database and we can really connect to it. So let's see if I can make my slides advance. So who am I? Well, I don't really care who I am. I mean, this is who I am. I'm a founder of a company called Straight Path Solutions. We do SQL Server Managed Services, and we do cloud migrations. I'm a husband, a dad, and a farmer. So I try to get most of those things in the picture. That's my clan there, all 4 kids, and my wife, who for some reason stays with me, and some of our sheep and our farm in the fall. Although right now my farm probably looks like your area, Jason. It's got about 2.5 feet of snow out there, so it's not as pretty right now. I've been a SQL Server MVP for, I think, 7 years. I've been working with SQL Server for about 20 years now, actually. And I blog and speak at different conferences and virtual chapters like this. And I happen to run a SQL Server user group meeting in New Hampshire. If you happen to be watching this from New Hampshire or New England, there's great user groups in the area, and I hope you check out the past site and visit them. So again, my goals today, real simple. I want to do a gentle introduction. Right? I'm not going to go in-depth in any one topic. I'm not going to beat any dead horses. I want to talk a little bit about the why, and then mostly, I just want to spend some time in the portal, and I want to leave time for questions. So again, I don't mind interruptions for questions. I may skip the answer right away if it gets answered later, but please type the questions in the window and let Jason see them and get them to me. So my first thing is just kind of a why. So some people tell you, you've heard this expression before in IT, hey, don't reinvent the wheel. And people say that to you all the time. And while I tend to agree with people, I was watching Mountain Men with my young boys. And one of the guys in Mountain Men, he has this old horse-drawn cart with old wooden wagon wheels. And his wheel broke. And I saw them having to fix the wheel. And what an ordeal that was. He had to take it and do all this work to it, and it took a better part of a day or half a day to fix his wheel. And when I was watching that, I thought I was also thinking of the same presentation, and I said, well, I'm going to change my presentation. Yes, it's okay to reinvent the wheel. These are what wheels have looked like over history. When I look at these wheels, I'm pretty happy that they reinvented the wheel, and they're continuing to reinvent the wheel. I bet you most of the 66 or so people watching this have probably, knock on wood, not had a flat tire in the past 3 or 4 years, unless they ran something over. They've not had a tire fail on them, though. 20 years ago, happened a lot more. 40 years ago, it happened all the time. It was a foregone conclusion. I went to a gas station the other day, and there was a teenager who had a flat tire and had no clue what to do. So I had to help him. You know, I felt like an old man, the bald guy coming out to help him change a tire, and in front of his girlfriend too. So it just doesn't happen much anymore. So I'm glad they reinvented the wheel. And again, you know, think of the wagon wheel. I'm not going to go into the steps here, but if you look at this picture, this is kind of a picture from Wikimedia Commons. It's a free picture, but it's a bunch of wheelwrights. It's obviously a bit dramatic. I don't think they really fly like that, but it's what they have to do. It took a lot of people to change a wheel, to change a tire. That's crazy. It's okay that they reinvented the wheel. So this is a show of hands question. I'm not going to obviously ask a show of hands because I can't see your hands. But in short, you know, who's ever had to grow a database file in SQL Server 6.5? Who's had to deal with SQL Server corruption in 6.5 or 7.0 or 6? Who's enabled transparent data encryption or deployed multi-site cross-country availability groups? Or who's ever had to just request a new server from IT and had to deal with that horrible server request form? You know, we can all raise our hands at most of those things. Some of these things have been a pain. Some of these things are still a pain and takes time. In fact, while I teach this webinar here, I'm actually taking a break from a week-long class or a 3-day class I'm doing on SQL Server 2016 high availability. And all the things that I'm teaching here, in fact, I asked my students to come to this webinar if they want. I'm doing a remote class. I told them to come to this class to see how easy it is to do the stuff I'm teaching them to do about building an availability group cross-country, cross-site in the cloud. So I've done 3 days of teaching, mostly about AGs, building the Windows cluster and doing all those things you have to do. Well, in a little while, we're going to build one in the cloud. So the short story is don't be afraid of the cloud. Don't be afraid of reinvented wheels. I think there's a lot of misperceptions out there about what this all means and what's coming. Well, the cloud has changed some things, but it's not changed everything, right? You know, a lot of times here I'll editorialize when I do this in person, and I'll ask kind of the audience who's afraid of the cloud, or who's a DBA that thinks that the cloud's coming for their job, and you know, hands actually go up, and we talk about that. I won't do the show of hands thing here, but if you're afraid of that, if you're thinking, oh no, the cloud's coming for my job, it really isn't. If your main and only job is pressing a bunch of buttons, doing failovers, yelling at developers, fixing security, and adding indexes all day, and that's it, and that's kind of what you do. You're like, I'm an infrastructure DBA, and this is what I do. Well, maybe your job is in jeopardy, not just with the cloud, but with the new features coming out, even in SQL Server 2017. So that part, the I just do 5 things and I yell at people all day, that role is in jeopardy, and that's a good thing, because that's not innovation. That's not really being a data advocate like I think a DBA should be. That's really just sort of being a technician doing a bunch of jobs that are more or less automatable. They're more or less able to be scripted. That's not really important for your data. I mean, it's important to protect security, don't get me wrong. It's important to add indexes, don't get me wrong. But, you know, is that the fun part of our job? Is that the important part of our job, helping make? No. It's really helping make decisions, right? It's helping plan where things go. So don't be afraid that the wheel's being reinvented. Instead, come to sessions like this, learn about what's happening, learn about what's changing, and be ready to handle it. Be ready to adapt. And the really cool thing, right, is, you know, Jason, you probably remember 5 years ago, right, Microsoft seemed to be, they were kind of, it's all cloud. You have to be in the cloud, you have to be gung-ho, and if you're not in the cloud, we don't care about you. Remember that kind of, that feeling you got?
Oh, absolutely.
And they've changed, right? So Satya's in, and they've changed. Now the story, what's the story now, Jason? You probably know the word already.
Oh, I can't remember.
Hybrid, cloud hybrid,
oh,
right?
That's right.
So, yeah. So it's hybrid. It's Microsoft knows, and Amazon knows, you know, nobody's going to be fully in the cloud or fully not in the cloud. We're all going to have components up there. So learn these things, learn these tools, and get ready to handle them. So when you're in the cloud, there's 2 main flavors. There's IaaS, which is infrastructure as a service, and PaaS, which is platform as a service. Or in our case, we're dealing with DB as, database as a service. So infrastructure as a service is real simple. You're setting up a VM in the cloud. So it's kind of like calling up Rackspace or your hosting company and saying, hey, build me a VM, and then you're using it. But it just happens to be in the cloud. Still, that saves you a lot of time because you don't have to worry about building servers. You can sort of change the server around on the fly. Instead of dealing with that horrible server request form, you can build it. And if you said, oops, we didn't build enough resources, you can add more resources with a minimal downtime, if any downtime. You can change the configuration and parameters on the fly. You can scale down or scale up on the fly. You can't do that in your data center, not easily. But platform as a service is what we're talking about. So platform as a service is, I'm actually getting a database engine as a service. Or just this past couple of weeks, Microsoft finally announced the public preview of Azure Managed Instance. They've been talking about it for weeks. I've been playing with it for a while. It's fun. It's exciting. There'll be a lot of probably sessions about it at PASS. I know Brent Dozar and team did the SEO blitz this past weekend and blogged the heck out of it. So they got a lot of blog posts about that. And we'll have some coming out on my site too, probably. But Azure Managed Instances, it's like a PaaS and IaaS combination. But we're talking about Azure SQL. So really, we're getting a database as a service. We're not worrying about the server. We're not worrying about sort of the infrastructure pieces. We're really just getting a database, or database as if we're doing elastic pools, and we're dealing with the data in the database. We're responsible for putting data in the database, making our schema, doing our design, and getting connections to it. We don't have to worry about the server or the HA or the DR. I mean, we can worry about it, and we'll show in the portal how we can affect it. But we're getting a platform as a service. And you're kind of getting a team of DBAs, so some of your DBAs are you're still the DBA for your environment. You still have to worry about how people get into the data, how they access it. You have to think about security. Microsoft and AWS or Amazon on their clouds, they tell you for compliance, they show you how their tools can be used for compliance and how they help with compliance. But all of their compliance guides also say you're responsible. You have to use these features in a compliant way. So all of these things are done for you in a sense, though, and your sort of tier 3, tier 4 DBA team in a sense is people at Microsoft. It's probably somewhere on tier 5 is Connor, so one of the architects. So when problems happen, you have a great team. And the cool thing about that too, though, is if you think about as bugs hit and as Spectre and Meltdown hit and things like that, you're part of a big family, and you're going to get support pretty quick. You're in an environment that's being innovated fairly quickly, and no matter whose cloud you're in, really. So those are some reasons for platform as a service. But basically, here's a couple of reasons why. In the olden days, if you wanted a new server or a new database, and I remember this from my last full-time job or 4 full-time jobs ago, you have to fill out this annoying form. I had one company where you had this horrible info path form. It's like 25 or 30 questions just to get a server. You fill the form out, you argue about permissions, you argue about this, you argue about that. You have to fill the form back out when the CIO needs this. And finally, after a lifetime, a server shows up on a loading dock, and then somebody's got to wheel it into the data center or the colo. They have to rack and stack it. They have to configure it. They have to put the operating system on it, get the backup tools on it, and maybe 4 weeks, maybe 6 weeks later, you have a server that you can install a SQL Server on and start working. VMs made that a little bit easier, obviously. Now it's only a few days if you have nice, it could be even a day if you have a great process with good scripting, but it could still be a few days, but maybe even a week if your server team wants to be pains. But it takes time. And if somebody wants a database and they have to fight the DBAs and maybe bribe the DBAs and buy us lunch and treat us nice to get us to make them a database, after we make them swear up and down they won't have SA rights or DBO rights. Well, in platform as a service, we'll see it. You go to the portal, you pick your options, you wait a few minutes, or you execute a script, and there's an asterisk there because everything I say today, I'm going to talk about and show you via the GUI. Everything I do today is infinitely scriptable. You can do PowerShell scripts for all this, and you should. I'm not showing you that because it's just not as exciting on the screen. And you can even see most things you do in the cloud, just like in SQL Server Manager Studio. You can right-click and say script it. You can actually go to the script task section and see the script that does what you're trying to do. So you can build automations and all. But it takes minutes, and that's one reason for IaaS or PaaS. Another reason, though, is this. You say, hey, I have this new idea. It's going to be great. We're going to be this amazing company, and it's going to be a software as a service company in the cloud, and it's going to be fun and exciting, and we're going to take all these things I'm passionate about and build an application, and people are going to buy it like hotcakes. It's going to sell like hotcakes. So with PaaS, you can quickly build something, a prototype, a POC, you can quickly explore it, and you get a full feature set right away on day one. You don't have to worry about, should I get enterprise or standard? Who cares? You're just paying the monthly fee for what you need. You're going to get enterprise features right away because it's there. It's already in there already, just like whatever spaghetti sauce that is. And you get that immediately. You don't have to worry about dealing with a server team. If you're just a smart woman or man with an idea, you don't need to go and have a whole server team build this thing for you. You can explore right away. You know, you can do it with Cosmos. I'm not talking about Cosmos, but all these PaaS options give you the ability to start working. You don't have to deal with the I think it's fun. I think Jason thinks it's fun. I think half of you probably think it's fun. The infrastructure, the ins and outs, and the memory and the CPU. Sure, that stuff's fun. I like geeking out on it. But if you have an idea and you're like a creative person who just wants to do something, you can just do it and try it. Build a service, build a serverless app, and get it there. And you can very quickly and easily scale up. If your idea was an amazing idea and you were correct, you know, if you're that 5% with a great idea, you can quickly scale up and you can put automations in and put improvements in. And you get the availability the way you need it. So maybe you don't need full cross-country DR right away until you have enough customers to warrant it. But once that big customer comes on and they're like, listen, I'm not going to unless I have DR. Well, now, okay, fine. Press a few buttons or run a script. Okay, you have DR. Now what's your excuse? And if you make a mistake, you know, if you're pets.com and you made a bunch of socks and little sock puppet things and that's all you have, and you have this idea that didn't work out, you can quickly get rid of the evidence and stop paying a monthly fee and be done. You can move on and innovate your next idea and think of your next big thing. And you don't have a bunch of servers kicking around that you have to put on eBay. So that's a really big benefit of PaaS. And then I'm not going to read this to you, but this is not really a quote. My quotes aren't this ugly or this wordy. But the point is if you want to build an availability group today, if you go from nothing and you want to build an availability group with multi-site DR, you really have to get a project going, you know. And if you don't have a great networking team and if you don't have the connections already good, you have to stretch subnets and stretch domains. And sure, there's domainless clusters now in 2016 and 2017, and there's lots of features, and you have to buy this enterprise, or do I want to be standard? You have to answer all these questions. And after a couple 100-hour project, you know, not all consulting time, but, you know, maybe when we do one, might do 80 hours for a customer. After 80 hours, we finally have something and we can go live. Well, in the cloud, and again, I'm showing you the GUI here, but in the cloud, it's really a couple buttons, and there's geo-replication and there's failover groups. And with a couple buttons and a few minutes of waiting, you're done. You've built your availability group. Poof, you're done. Move on. And we'll show you that. So I'm going to skip the editorial intermission. This is where we normally are better in person. This is where we just kind of talk about the why and the how of the cloud. So in a second here, we're going to stop talking and go to the portal. Before I do that, or as I do that, are there any big questions, Jason?
No questions at the moment.
Okay, perfect. We like that. Not that I'm trying to discourage you from asking questions. Please do. I think right now you should see the Azure Portal.
Yep, I can see it.
Wonderful. If you can, and according to this, 98% of the people can as well. So good. So you're looking at my Azure Portal, and this is just a dummy one I have. Nothing real is in here. And I'm just, again, we're just going to explore the portal. And if you're familiar here, this is going to be boring. But if you're not familiar here, this is what you're missing. So this right here is it's one view of the portal. It's mostly a default view, I think, in this account. I don't think I've tweaked much. Maybe I added a server here that's not even there anymore. But this basically just shows you what you have. This is your dashboard, and it shows you what you've built. So these are right here. These are a bunch of resources that I've built. And we're going to build some new stuff. I have some already built up that we can go to, so we don't have to wait a few minutes for them to build. And I'm just going to build an Azure SQL database, and I'm going to talk about what I'm doing as I go. So I'm going to click on Create Resource, and there's a few different ways to do this. I could have just come down here and done it right here, but I'm just trying to show you up here. So you can type in SQL database, and again, it's right there for me as well, but it doesn't matter. And the thing I want to show you here is Microsoft's trying to build the tool that helps you help yourself. So almost every service you build here, you'll see documentation and overview and pricing details and examples before you even create it. I won't click on those, but this is true for just about everything you can create. Every resource you could possibly imagine, you can do here. And if you don't have an Azure account If you have MSDN, you probably already have credits. If you go to azure.com, you can sign up for a trial. If you don't have MSDN, you've not had a trial before. We're going to click Create. And what we're building here is just a single database. So Azure SQL, everything we're going to talk about here is about a database. So it's one database. Now, when we talk about pricing and DTUs, we're talking about a single database. There's a concept also that I'll talk about here, and we might show you, might not, depending on time. There's a concept called elastic database pools. An elastic database pool is a way where you can pool resources together. So instead of paying $26,000 for the most expensive database you can get, or whatever it is per month for the most expensive, we'll look at that in a second. We won't build it though. I don't have that much money in the bank account to pay for that. But we'll show you what the pricing is. But whatever that most expensive price is today in the East 1 or East 2 region, you can either build 20 of those databases and pay $10,000 per each database, or if you can pool the resources together and say like you're maybe sharding an application out, or you have multiple databases serving one purpose, and you have each client in their own database, you can build multiple databases, put them into one elastic pool, and depending on the type of pool you're in, you can have up to 500 databases in there. And then you pay that one $26,000 is the most expensive per month, and it can be $4,000 or it can be $2,000 or $400 a month. But you pay that one price for all of those databases, and they share resources. And you can cap the max resource one database can use. And the goal there, the sort of the premise there is, there's this old saying that, we're not saying, but there's this sort of question out there, at least I hear it out here, which basically says, what happens to the plumbing system in New York City if everybody flushes their toilet at the same time? And nobody has to find out, because nobody ever does that. The city of New York will not all press their toilet bowl flush valve at the same time. The premise of elastic pools is your users, your customers aren't all hitting at the exact same second or millisecond all your resources. They're probably, some customers are busy now, some customers are busy in 5 seconds, some are waiting now, so you can share those resources and have a pool. So that's what you do if you're dealing with multiple databases. I have a lot of clients, or a couple clients, in Azure Elastic Pools, because we have multiple databases, because we're sort of a software as a service companies, and they're in a sharded one database per client style, single tenancy. But we're just going to build a single database here. We will call it Azure Cloud Pass. And this database, let me fix that. This is a database. So this is going to, when I'm done, this will be a SQL Server database that we can connect to. And the subscription is just every time you have an Azure account, you can have a subscription. If you're in an enterprise account, you have probably a different subscription. I'm just using a pay-as-you-go because this is just my dummy account. And resource groups are they're really just it's what they sound like. It's a grouping of resources. You can kind of control what's what. It just helps for administrative. And we'll just keep it in the Azure SQL Learning one. And the source, you can create it from one of 3 sources. You can create it from a blank database, which is just really an empty database. You can create it from the sample, which is the AdventureWorks Lite database, and it's pretty light, by the way. Or you can take a backup, and the backup is an internal backup. So this is a backup from another Azure SQL database. In this case, we'll just do AdventureWorks Lite, and then you have to put it on a server. Now, I'm going to create a new server here, but I want to pause here. We're not actually, if you've built Azure VMs before, if you've built IaaS deployments before, we're not actually building a new server. We are building a server, but we're not, the person who's pressing the button, me, Mike Walsh right now, is not really building a server that I own and manage. In the background, a server is being configured, I guess. But this is really just a resource. It's really just a container. So, well, it's called a server, and it is a server. I think of it more as a container, because I'm not picking like an A3, or if this or Amazon, like a M4 XL. I'm just creating a server. So we'll call this Azure SQL Pass. There's no SQL anymore, is there? Azure Pass. And we'll give it a login. Real exciting. And we'll give it a password. And we'll create in the East region. We'll click Select. So what's happening now is I've told SQL Server, I've told Windows rather, I told Azure that I want to put my new database here on a new server called Azure Pass. And for my pricing tier, and I'm checking the box that says not now for Elastic Pool. I'm not doing an Elastic Pool here. And again, if there's time at the end, we'll play with the Elastic Pool. But I'm picking my pricing tier. And you can be basic, standard, premium, and sort of premium RS, which is in preview. But yeah, we'll just stick with these three. So basic pools, you can only get up to five DTUs is what you get. Now, what's a DTU? Well, they have a link here that asks that question. There's actually a great blog post, and I need to get a link for that. But if you just go to search SQL Sentry DTU calculator Andy, you'll find a link. There it is. What the heck is a DTU? This is a wonderful blog post from Andy Mallon. Great blog post. He's an amazing blogger, and his stuff is great. But seriously, he's asking what is a DTU, and he explains it. And he actually did some experimentation. There's this website out there called Azure DTU Calculator, and it's a pretty decent calculator. If you basically grab some perfmon data, if you grab some perfmon data from your environment, it tells you what to grab here, and run it through, it'll kind of tell you, kind of, a finger in the wind to check the wind speed and temperature, sort of check of how many DTUs you need. He went through that calculator, did a bunch of experimentation, and came up with sort of the difference and a lot of conclusions. Actually really good. So really good stuff, and it still applies today. And he's a great resource. So check that out. Let me go back to my portal. So just search for SQL Sentry DTU Calculator Andy, and you'll find it. Oh, I should say Sentry 1, but I still say SQL Sentry. So anyway, the DTUs are a function of CPU, of read performance, and your log throughput, which makes sense, right? Because I don't know how they're doing the HA behind the scenes, but you get HA. You go to a standard here, and we're going to have HA. We're going to have 3 copies. So if we lose a server, we're back online. We don't have DR. So if the Azure data center dies that we're in, we don't have DR, but we do have HA right out of the gate. So I'm going to guess that they're asking you that they function the log throughput, because if you're really busy doing a lot of logging, that might be more expensive in terms of keeping you in sync. It's just a guess. I don't know if it's built on availability groups or what it's built on. I don't know. I don't think they've told us the architecture anywhere. At least I haven't had time to look for it yet. But anyway, you can pick your DTUs in a sliding calculator. You can go anywhere from 10 for standard up to 3,000, and you can pick your storage size. So this is important to show here too. There's this. People think, oh, you can't have a big database. Well, sure you can. You can actually have a 1 terabyte database. You go to premium, you can have a 4 terabyte database. So I said 26,000. I was wrong. The most expensive is 16,000. So if I click apply right now, I just built a $16,000 a month server. I like all of you, but I don't like you all that much. So we'll build a 10 DTU. It's $15 a month. So I've picked my database name. I've went to my resource group. I built a server. I'm not going to do Elastic Pool. So actually, you know what? We have time. We'll just show you the Elastic Pool. We'll configure an Elastic Pool right now, but we won't actually create it as an Elastic Pool. So an Elastic Pool you have to build. I guess we will. You convinced me to do it. I convinced myself. So you can have a standard pool. This will look familiar. We can have a basic pool, a standard pool, or a premium pool, and sort of kind of in preview mode, but it's preview, so I don't know what the full future state of that is yet. But stick with basic, standard, or premium. This is the same sort of pricing and same t-shirt sizing sort of that we have in the database. So we'll pick a standard pool, and this tells you a standard pool we can have. Oops, I didn't change something. So I have to select the standard pool, and this, as much as I love Azure, the portal is interesting. Every time you open a new container here, it keeps sliding over. So we're going to go standard. We can have up to 500 databases. We can have up to 4 terabytes in the pool total, with 3,000 DTUs and I think 2 terabytes per database max. And the pricing is $2.25 per DTU per month. That's the estimate. So we'll click select. So we built that, and we'll now come in here and we'll actually configure our pool. So we're in the standard pool, but now we're going to configure our pool size. This is where I get to be cheap. So again, pricing, what this means is now we can have multiple databases in this pool. So instead of this $200 a month I'm going to pay for one database, I'm paying this $200 for up to 500 databases. And I can go all the way up to 3,000 ETUs and pay $6,000 per month with 500 databases. So we'll be cheap. We'll go down to, I have 100 databases, which is 50 DTUs. Kind of play the sad music. I'm being cheap. And I'm gonna destroy this if I remember to after the class, so I won't actually pay the $100 this month out of my free credits, because this would probably actually go over my credits. We won't close that. So that's that. And if I come over here and click create, actually I won't even do the elastic pool. We'll just not do the pool. We'll stay standard. I'm going to click create, and this will start building what I just told it to build. So it's going to build a server and build a database, and in a second we'll see it pop up here. This little thing up here, this little our alarm button, is our notification center. So we can see earlier I reset a password before this because I forgot my password and I need to know it when I connect in. And now we see that deployment in progress. And if I click on this, we'll actually see the status. And it doesn't show much, but it just kind of shows us what's going on. And if there's a problem, we can kind of look in here in the outputs and see what's going on for certain things. But it's not really that exciting. In a little while here, we will see a notification pop up here, and that will tell me that my database is built and I can start connecting to it. But in the meantime, I've already built a database. I built the database called TDE demo, and this is a database that I put onto, let's see what server I put it on. I'm going to click on the database. Actually, we'll hang here. We'll look at some options in the database instead of waiting for the new one to be built. So I put this on my server called Test Server Walsh. So I'm going to click on Test Server Walsh. And again, I said earlier, the server that we build is not really, this server here is not really a server per se. It is a server, but it's not an IaaS VM that we own or administer. Like I can't go and restart this server. I can't go and change the resources of the server. I work with the databases on the server. So this is the server that my TDE demo database is on. And I'm only doing it this way because I don't want to have to wait for that VM to be, that SQL to be built and then connect it. But in just a second here, we'll see that SQL done. But here is the overview of the server level. So there's some things that we can do at the server container level, and there's some things we can do at the database level. So when we make changes at the server or container level, these are things that are global. These affect the entire server and all the databases on it, or the database or databases in that container. So I'm not going to go through everything here, but there's an activity log which just shows, I don't know why it's being slow today. I have a good Wi-Fi here today, but it shows us events that have happened. There's probably nothing here. We can control access and do some permissions here, but I'm going to come into firewalls and virtual networks. So we can allow connectivity from an IP range and one IP range only if you want to let people in. So for this class, I've opened it up. I've made a rule that allows 0000 to 255, 255, 255, 255. Never do this in your production environment. This is just for me right now. So have at it, whatever you guys want to do. I don't care. Nothing will happen. It's just an Azure database. But you can connect here. One thing you can do here, though, is you'll notice this is the transparent data encryption option box. There used to be, and I forget when it changed, I want to say sometime in the fall, there used to be an on-off button here. Oh, by the way, the resource is deployed, so that new database is done. So actually, we'll go to that resource and look at that instead. But I didn't get too far ahead here. So this is our new database, and I'm going to go to the new server that we built, the Azure database.windows.net, and we're going to go to the same place. So I'll go back to the transparent data encryption here. Wait for that to load. So you'll notice there's no off or on button here. You don't get to choose whether or not transparent data encryption is on. You have it on, which is good. That's what you want. So instead of having to deal with certs and all that, and understand, can we support it? Do we need Enterprise Edition? The answer is nope. You are transparently encrypted already. So that's good. You just all have ticked an auditor's checkbox. But you can use your own key. So you can set up the Azure Key Vault, and you can actually use your own key. So a lot of clients, a lot of security conscious clients in the financial and insurance sectors and health sectors are wanting, especially their SaaS providers, to actually swap keys. So every month or every 90 days, change your encryption key. And a lot of clients, the big companies say, actually, don't just change the key. Here, use my key. Well, you can do that. There's some long-term backup retention. This is still in preview, but my general rule with most previews is if it's a preview that's made it from private to public, it's probably going to be supported. Your mileage may vary. Don't come and sue me later, but it likely will be will be supported. Not always, there are exceptions, but if it's something like this, which is answering a real problem, if this scratches a lot of itches, and this is a pretty big itch, having to maintain long-term backup recovery, you can do this. You have to spin up some storage, you have to pay a little bit for that, but if you want to, you can do it. And we won't go into that too much, but if there's time, we can. If I click here, I can see the databases that are in this server. Obviously, we just have the one we created, the Azure Cloud Pass. We'll go back to that in a little while. There's no elastic pools. I didn't create an elastic pool. But a couple things that are sort of server settings here too are important. One is this, and I love this. In fact, I think I did a video about this a couple weeks ago. This is cool. So I have this with a client that we've gone live in, and for $15 a month per server, this is for the server, not for the database. This will audit your environment, and it will do threat detection. And I'm not going to show you any emails because I don't have enough data built up because I'm cheap and I keep destroying my VM. So I need to keep a VM up for a while and then do a video that shows actual emails. I get real emails from clients that I'm the Azure administrator for, or at least on the notify lists, but I don't want to show you their emails. That would be bad. But basically, what threat detection does, well, we'll turn it on. And these are just to show you the types. So there are 3 types of threat detection. There's SQL injection vulnerability, and anomalous client login. So SQL injection will actually tell us, hey, SQL injection is happening, or we think it's happening based on your code and what we're seeing come into the SQL through the network interface. There's SQL injection vulnerability, which is, hey, we think maybe your code's at risk for SQL injection. You might want to look at this, and actually does give warnings. And then there's anomalous client login. Anomalous client login, there's 2 kinds of bad logins that we get. There's actual bad logins of people sort of repeatedly trying bad passwords over and over and over, login failure, login failure, login failure, and it finally works. But then there's login failures where somebody sniffed a password someplace, or they stole a password, and they got in successfully because the password worked and they authenticated properly, but they came from someplace we weren't expecting. So this is cool because it'll actually show you, hey, listen, we have a connection coming in from someplace we've never seen before. So one of my customers, because just the way they work, and he doesn't want to work with VM for right now in his dev mode, he's actually working in his elastic pool databases by just, when he travels around the country following his son's baseball team, college baseball team, he literally goes into the portal and adds wherever he's working from to his dev database environment's firewall, and he connects. And in dev, we just play with this feature, and we'll get an email saying, hey, there's somebody connecting. It tells you where in the country or the world they're connecting from, tells you a part of the username they used, and it tells you their IP address. So I'll send an email saying, hey, is this you? He says, yep, that's me. And I say, cool, now we know who it is. So it will tell you, hey, the login worked, and the password was fine, and the account's all good and has permissions, but this is coming from someplace that I really wasn't expecting. It's just okay. And that's a really cool feature. Because in this day and age, we care about these things. So build that. You go right now and build that in your production environment. I'll give you 5 minutes. You can't. And now you can with time. Okay, so if you take the time and build it, now go change it when the next version of SQL comes out. This is what I'm talking about with the benefits of PaaS. And again, this doesn't answer every problem. I'm not deluded. I have more on-prem clients than I do in the cloud still. Although when I look at my Manager Studio drop-down, I see more Amazon RDS and Azure SQL connections lately than I do non, and that's mostly because I'm VPNing to the others. But anyway, in RDP. But the point is these features are here, and they actually help. Another one, so we'll unsave, we'll uncheck that edit, is we can create a failover group. And I won't do the failover group because this takes me a little bit more to create on the other side, and we'll actually kind of do a already built. But we can create a failover group, and actually, in fact, I will just show you that. Let me go back. So we'll go back to home. I'll open the other server. Because this one already has it built, and we're getting close on time. I don't have a failover group here. Yeah, yes, sir, you got a question?
Yeah, while that's coming up, got a question here. How do you add additional user to have DBA privileges?
Yep. So you can. It's basically through T-SQL scripting. So you're going to go in there and create user in the master database. So there's a master database inside your Azure SQL instance, and you'll create a login there. And I forget the permission. You don't give it SA. I actually forget the right off the top of my head. Somebody I'm sure probably in the chat remembers, but you granted a certain permission. Yeah. Is it control server though inside of Azure? I have to look.
I don't know.
Yeah. But anyway,
it's been a while.
But you create that login in SQL. And actually I'll jump into Manage in a second and show you. But that's the short answer there.
Okay.
And I don't have the server on the other side built, but you can build a failover group, and this failover group, I'll kind of go through the setup. I think we might take too long to build. Let's see if I happen to have a server on the other side. So we'll call it test FG. It's already built. Test FG 2018. So this has to be a unique name because this is actually a public IP. So failover group Mike can now never be created again. And I do have a server in the West. So I have a server called West Walsh. So we'll do that. And this right here, it's basically a DR that allows us to automatically fail databases over that are in this group to a different data center. So it's kind of like building an availability group. And there's two ways to do this. There's a failover. I'll show you the other thing too. But this is one way to do it. So we can select databases to add. And it'll tell me how much it's going to cost me. Oh, $15 a month. I can afford it. I just won't go to Starbucks tomorrow. I don't drink Starbucks anyway. I'm a New Hampshireite in the middle of nowhere. Us farmers don't understand Starbucks. I do when I travel, but not home. So failover group Mike. It's on this server. I have a different server that I had already built earlier. You have to just trust me. It's the same way I built this server. And I just added a database. I'm going to click create. And if this deployment doesn't fail on me, soon we'll have a failover group. And what I've done is I've configured a cross-country geo-redundant availability group with a DR with an hour. I think I basically will automatically fail over if I lose anything less than an hour. Now you can do manual failover, automatic failover, and you can control how much you care about, what's more important, RPO or RTO, because it's going cross country, we're not talking sub-seconds of guarantees. So basically, I think the default or the lowest you can go is an hour. So basically, you're saying, I'm willing to lose an hour of data if it gets me over there quicker. And we'll wait a second, and this might come up. Let's see. Are there any questions, Jason, while this is spinning?
Yeah, you've got a couple here. Let's see here. Well, let me get back to the top. Oh, here we go. How do you schedule stored procedures or jobs to run on your database without SQL Agent?
You can't. It's just, no, I'm joking. Yeah, so you can do things like Azure Automation, Azure Automation runbooks, Azure Functions. You can do things like Elastic queries, Elastic database jobs, third-party tools. So those are the ways you do it. So typically you do like an Azure Automation runbook. There won't be enough time to show that, but that's one way you can do it. And all SQL Agent is just a job management agent that opens up and runs processes. It should have never been tightly coupled to SQL Server, I think, looking back. But there's ways to do that with third-party tools, or you can write your own code, or again use Azure Automation runbooks. Cool. And that failover group's back. Is there another question you want to ask?
Yeah. And one of the other questions here is many of the monitoring and maintenance scripts that it uses for SQL Server and a VM or on-premise have problems with SQL Azure because there is no use statement. How do you work through looping in Azure for those kind of operations?
Yeah. So, yep. So if you want to run something to multiple databases, you would basically, if you're an Elastic pool, you can do that with what's called an Elastic database job, and I think you can run an Elastic database job or query even if you're not in a pool. I have to see that, actually. I don't know if you can or not. I'll need to. I don't know. I've not had to do that. But an Elastic query allows you to do that, and you can sort of point your target connections and run it against them all. But if you're just dealing with Azure SQL only, and you're buying 10 databases or 20 databases, and you're just paying for those databases individually, and you're not using an Elastic query, you'd have to kind of reconnect to each database. You can't really do a use like that. So, depending on what if you're thinking more of lifting and shifting an instance of SQL Server with, 10 different databases for 10 different applications, you might start looking more into Azure Managed Instances, because that might be more what you're looking for. If you're looking for, hey, I want to build a web application or an app and I want to have a simple database behind it, that's where Azure SQL, I think, probably shines more. So if you're thinking that I'm the back office DBA, and these are all my line of business apps that are run by different vendors, I think Azure Managed Instance is probably more your friend, because that has the agent and that has the use statement that allows cross-database queries natively without having to do any extra work. So so the failover group's done. So we have this failover group here called failover group Mike. If we click on this, we'll see what we have. We have our database right now is protected. So if the East region data center dies or data centers die and I'm in trouble, my database that's in this group, which is right here, let me scroll back up, is protected. My TDE demo database is protected. So, and it will automatically fail over as long as I won't lose more than an hour of data. So I have a grace period of an hour. I'm basically saying, yep, Azure, we can fail over, and I'm giving you a grace period of up to an hour. And if I don't want that, I want to be manual, I can set that to manual, and then I can just initiate the failover myself. So I can wait to see, is the data center really dead, or is it just a really, is it a denial of service attack again? And should I just wait an hour and not fail over? You can do that too. But you get two connection strings. So automatically I have a read-write listener endpoint and a read-only listener endpoint. So I can route my read-only connections here and my read-writes here. I didn't do any work. I literally just, while I was answering 2 or 3 questions, I just did what I've been teaching my class to do in 3 days. I built an availability group across the country, and I didn't have to spend any more money than $15 a month. That's a pretty cool thing about PaaS. And with an Azure Managed Instance, it works in much the same way. So think about that. Now think about your line of business apps going into an AMI. And hopefully here in this, there'll be an Azure Managed Instance talk soon in this virtual chapter. But if not, I'll submit one, Jason. But it's a really cool feature to do the same kind of stuff. It's PaaS for an instance, basically, with caveats. So we're running close on time. So I want to show you more, but basically here we have our databases. We can integrate with Active Directory. So if I had Azure Active Directory, I could integrate there and actually add Active Directory groups and Active Directory users to groups in SQL Server. I can do a bunch of things with Elastic Pools. I can do the failover group I just did. This is the server level. If I go to the databases, there's things that I love to show you here, but with 8 minutes, I don't want to show you everything. There's performance overviews. There's health dashboards. We can do automatic tuning, so we can do some of the things that are available in 2017 finally, like the plan regression fixes in the plan cache. We can do things like automatic indexing and removal of indexing, and the default behavior, you can have it just recommend indexes, or you can have it go ahead and implement indexes. And I used to be afraid of this feature until I started working with a lot of SaaS customers that each have lots of customers, and they are single tenancy. So if I have a customer with 1,200 databases, and are all 1,200 other clients using their database in the exact same way? And the answer is no. One customer might have more visits to patients. One customer might have more, more parking tickets to cars, or whatever line of business they're in. There might be a different data SKU in each database. So it's very hard to do a one-size-fits-all indexing for everything. Sure, there's the basics, clustered indexes, foreign key indexes, unique indexes where you know it's unique and blah, blah, blah. But I don't know that the users in this database are doing something really funky and they have database different. Now, I could spend a lot of time finding bad queries and adding indexes, or I can just let the tool do it. So if I have a customer with 1,500 databases in Elastic Pool, which is not unheard of at all, it's actually pretty low, I don't have time. Nobody has time. No human being is going to add indexes all day long that are absolutely perfect for everybody. So this is not your grandmother's database tuning advisor. This is much better. And you can see the recommendation it's doing, and even cleans up after itself when it realizes it doesn't need that index anymore. That's a pretty cool feature. But I want to kind of come into Manager Studio real quick next just to show you what we can do in there. There's vulnerability assessment reviews. That's a new thing in SQL Server 2017 too. There's dynamic data masking that we can build into our database. There's lots of things we can do here. The point is, I'm just showing you that I'm just adding features by making a decision on pricing and clicking a button, and now I can play with it. I can do Azure Sync. I get my connection strings that I need. So all these, oops, I need my ODBC connection. Well, there it is. I need my JDBC connection. Well, there it is. I can discover and classify data. This was in 2017 SSMS as well. So all these things are building into the product, and every month when new features come into SSMS, they're coming into Azure SQL as well. They're coming into whatever in SQL. They're coming into all the cloud options. And again, I'm not just trying to show Microsoft only. I like all the cloud providers. But if you're dealing with platform as a service databases and you are a Microsoft Stack shop and you like working in SQL Server, I'm always going to steer you towards Azure SQL over Amazon RDS. I like Amazon RDS for Aurora. I think they do a really good job with Aurora and MySQL. Better than MySQL does. They do a good job with Postgres. But if you're a SQL Server shop, and that's what I've been for 20 years, a SQL Server person, I'm going to steer you towards Azure SQL. It just does a better job with it because it's native. Think about who your DBA team is. Your DBA team at Tier 5 and Tier 4 and Tier 6 are the product managers who build this. They're the people who've been working with SQL Server forever. So real quick, I just want to show you here. You remember that database TDE demo? Well, here I am. I'm connected to it. So I'm gonna reconnect. I'll break my connection, and I'm just gonna connect here. I'm connecting to that test server Walsh. That's the one we built earlier, not the one we just built now. I could connect to the one we just built now, but I have to play with the firewall. And I click here. I see my databases. So I see TDE demo. If I right-click on this and do new query, I don't think I have any data in here right now. Let me see. Never type in a demo. I have one table called demo, so I can say select star from demo. Never say select star either. And I have an empty database because I was playing with this and took data out. But I can query the database. Another cool feature, and I show this every time I've done this, is these are all the trace flags that are on by default in Azure SQL. And most of these are undocumented, if not all of them. So it's just interesting that there's a lot of little things Microsoft's doing to make this work for us. I just thought that's kind of funny. And here, somebody asked earlier about adding a database. Well, I can do a new query. I can do a new query master, and you can basically add a login here to master. So there's no server roles, but there's database roles in master. And I think it's a DB manager role is what I was coming up with. So there's I don't know if I can script my user with the permissions. Let's see. I think DB manager, and it doesn't show, but I'm pretty sure DB manager is sort of the, I don't think, let me see if TD demo has a DB manager. I don't know if it does. I get confused in this one. Yeah, there's no DB manager here. So I think DB manager in the master database is the effective quote-unquote SA rights. That gives me the ability to install SP who is active. And if you use SP who is active, I don't think I installed that here yet. Let me see. Nope, I didn't. But you can actually you can go to SP who is active. You can go to Adam's script and download it, and I love it. He's done a lot of work on that script over the past decade or more. I remember watching him build that when I was sitting in the SQL Server user group in Waltham, Massachusetts, watching him build that during people's presentations. And he's made a lot of improvements to it, and including Azure support, full Azure SQL support. But the point here is I'm connected to this database just like I'm connected to any other database. And if I was dealing with a client database, I don't want to show you my dropdown because it has some client names in there. But if you change this, there's actually Active Directory Universal MFA support. So if I had an Active Directory, which I don't have, but if I had an Active Directory at straightpathsql.com and Azure and AAD, I could log in with this, and it can actually do multi-factor. So if I configure my Azure Portal, my Azure account to use multi-factor, and I give myself a domain account at mike@straightpathsql.com, I can log in with my domain account and actually get the text message on my phone saying, hey, please type your text message in. So that's like security by default. It's just really cool to see all the things you're doing. So I'll pause there and see if there's any questions and kind of let Jason wrap this up if there isn't. But I could probably spend 3 hours just playing in Azure.
Yeah, we've got a few more questions, but only a couple more minutes. But let's start off with this one. How do you monitor the Azure database server usage? Can you throw an email alert, bad queries, high DTU usage, et cetera, et cetera?
Yes. Yep. You can configure email alerts for all different things out of the gate. Now, there's third-party tools like I know I'm not saying one tool over the other, but SQL Sentry, I use them. I know they have some Azure monitoring. I'm sure all the rest of them do as well. But you can build up monitors, and you can actually build rules and have them send you emails. So I'm not going to do that right now, but yes, you can do that. So you can get emails when a worker thread exhaustion happens. In fact, one of my clients, they had too few DTUs and they had a worker thread problem. So we get emails when their worker threads get over 70% used because they just went a little cheaper on DTUs. So yeah, we can get alerts like that.
Okay. And does managed instances run SSRS, including the report manager site as PaaS?
I don't know. I have to play with that. I honestly I don't know. So
okay,
I wish I did.
And then
I don't think so, but I'll have to double check.
Yeah. Let's see. And in SSMS, Azure SQL version is showing 12.0.2000. I thought it was the latest version of SQL.
Well, it's a little more tricky than that. I think depending where you are, you can upgrade or downgrade. But yeah, I have to look at this and see what's going on with the version there. But I wouldn't pay too much mind to what my version is here. This may just be. I have to look actually because I know you can change version, but it is the latest. I may just be an older server, but I'll double check on that.
Yeah, I think they're also on different version numbers between on-premise and cloud.
Yeah, it's a little different, but I want to say, yeah. Let me play with that. I'll come to my blog and send me an email, and I'll answer your question. But it is a different version. It's just I mean, you see here it says Microsoft SQL Azure, so it's SQL Azure 12.0. It's not Microsoft SQL 12.0. That's the difference.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see. I think that's it with the people that are still here for questions. With that, Mike, I'll also send these over to you. So if you want to reach out to anyone that sent you any email, submit any questions.
Okay, perfect.
Thanks, Mike, for doing this presentation with us today, and thank you everyone for attending. I believe we have a session coming up just next week again. So looking forward to having everyone back and talk to everyone later. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason.